If you have 100 unhappy clients using your software right now, um, statistically speaking, 96 of them are never going to tell you.
They really won't.
No, they aren't going to submit a ticket. They aren't emailing your account managers. And, they certainly aren't going to call. They're just going to silently cancel their contracts and walk away.
Just disappear.
Exactly. So today we're looking at why those remaining four, the ones who actually pick up the phone to yell at you, are arguably the most valuable people in your pipeline. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
If you are an IT project manager, a business analyst, or maybe you're sitting on a customer success team right now, you probably have a ticket in your queue that you are just dreading answering.
Oh, we all do.
Right. So our mission today is to entirely reframe how we view that dreaded client complaint. I mean, think of a complaint like the check engine light on your car dashboard.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It's just a symptom, right? The real problem is under the hood. And we have a massive stack of sources to unpack today, from enterprise customer success manuals to IT case studies and even some psychological frameworks from leadership experts like Simon Sinek.
Yeah, and in a world of constant information overload, mastering the psychology and the strategy behind these complaints is really what separates everyday vendors from true trusted partners.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
It really is. In the IT and tech industry, we are inherently conditioned to view a complaint as, well, a failure, a disruption to our sprint cycle or a stain on our SLAs.
Right, a red mark on the scorecard.
Exactly. But when you synthesize the literature we pulled for this deep dive, a complaint isn't a failure at all. It is highly specific, incredibly raw, free consulting.
Free consulting, I love that. But before we can fix a complaint, we really have to understand why the client is actually upset, which is, as our sources point out, rarely what they say on the surface.
Oh, almost never. And one of the clearest through lines in all of our materials is that complaints in the IT sector do not just materialize out of thin air. There is almost always a digital paper trail.
Like previous tickets.
Exactly. Usually the ultimate explosion is just the result of a string of unanswered support tickets, or maybe a half-hearted technical workaround that your team implemented 6 months ago and then just completely forgot about.
So the complaint is really just the moment the organizational pressure finally exceeds their tolerance threshold.
That's it, exactly. And our sources outline 3 main triggers for this friction in IT. The first one is expectation misalignment.
Oh, this is the classic gap between what sales promised and what development actually built.
You know it. The client signs an SOW believing the software will automate a specific workflow, but the delivered product actually requires manual data entry. That's a sales or onboarding failure, but by the time the client is furious, it's masquerading as a technical problem on your help desk.
Right, they blame the engineers. So what's the second trigger?
Service degradation. So we're talking about tangible operational failures, unexpected outages, debilitating bugs, or severely slow performance.
And those come in hot, right? Because they immediately impact the client's bottom line. Like if a payment gateway goes down, every minute is lost revenue.
There's zero room for diplomatic niceties in those moments. But interestingly, the third trigger is actually the most insidious of all, and that's communication breakdown.
Okay, wait, I want to push back on that slightly. Is feeling ignored really as bad as a server crash? It seems like, I don't know, one is a massive financial liability and the other is just a bruised ego.
It sounds that way, but you have to look at the psychological mechanism at play here. A server crash is an objective technical failure. It's a machine breaking. A communication breakdown is a subjective human failure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it sends a direct signal to the client that they do not matter to your organization. The emotional toll of feeling fundamentally ignored will absolutely sever a vendor relationship way faster than a temporary system outage.
Which brings us back to that staggering statistic we opened with, that 96% of unhappy customers just churn silently. Wait, if 96% of people just leave silently, shouldn't we actually be grateful for the ones who take the time to complain?
We should be profoundly grateful. Simon Sinek has a fantastic perspective on this that applies perfectly to IT. He points out that managers constantly tell their teams, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Right, classic corporate speak.
But Sinek argues that is a completely flawed mentality. If they knew the solution, they wouldn't be coming to you in the first place. People who bring you problems, provided they are willing to roll up their sleeves and help fix them, are incredibly valuable. They're explicitly revealing your organizational blind spots.
They're essentially shining a flashlight on the exact processes that are driving the silent 96% away.
Exactly.
But here's the critical operational challenge. Diagnosing the psychology of the person holding that flashlight. Because when that phone rings, all complaints are definitely not created equal.
Not at all. They are highly nuanced. The entrepreneurial playbooks we reviewed categorize complainers into 5 distinct profiles. And, you know, understanding the underlying motive dictates your entire de-escalation strategy.
Okay, so walk us through them.
The first is simply the valid complainer. Your product failed, you missed a deadline, and their anger is entirely fact-based and justified.
Straightforward enough. But the second type is the pessimist, right?
Yes, the pessimist. This is the client who views every interaction as an emotional tax. You resolve their database issue on Tuesday, and by Thursday, they are complaining about the font color in the new UI update.
They just perpetually move the goalposts.
Precisely. You have to manage them by setting incredibly rigid boundaries. But the third profile is fascinating. It's the ideological complainer.
Oh, I loved this part of the research.
Right. This person might actually love your software, but they fundamentally hate your company's core beliefs or corporate values.
There was a highly specific story in the sources about this. There was a CEO of a growing firm who was this staunch, vocal advocate of free market capitalism, and suddenly his company gets completely flooded with negative online reviews from one particular individual.
Yeah, and instead of hiding behind a PR team, the CEO tracks down the guy's number and calls him directly at 10 o'clock at night.
And it turns out the caller was a staunch communist who utterly despised the CEO's capitalist philosophy.
But what happens next is the crucial takeaway. They didn't yell at each other. They ended up having a 45-minute, highly respectful debate about economics. Fast forward several years, and that angry critic actually reached out to the CEO as a respectful acquaintance.
It's wild. By leaning into that values clash with a genuine human touch, he neutralized the hostility. But what happens when the intent is actually malicious? Because that leads to the fourth type, the competitor or the enemy.
Right, and this requires a completely different defensive posture. The competitor isn't looking for a resolution. They are weaponizing the complaint process to deliberately sabotage your reputation.
Like astroturfing negative reviews on G2 or Reddit to create a false narrative about your platform.
Exactly. And finally, the fifth type is the troll, someone who complains purely for the attention or the sport of the argument.
But practically speaking, for the help desk engineer taking a call, how do you differentiate between a troll, a pessimist, and a valid complainer who's just, having an incredibly stressful day? Where's the line?
That is where we apply Simon Sinek's above a 5 rule. It's a brilliant psychological heuristic. Sinek suggests that if a client's emotional reaction to a relatively minor issue, say a button is misaligned on a dashboard, is an 8 out of 10 in intensity, then the complaint is not actually about the button.
Right, because the math doesn't add up. A misaligned button does not warrant a screaming phone call.
Exactly. So you have to realize it's about something else entirely. Maybe their own CEO is breathing down their neck about quarterly metrics, or their company is undergoing massive layoffs.
So the trick is to replace your natural defensiveness with genuine curiosity. Instead of thinking this client is totally unhinged, you ask yourself, what underlying pressure is forcing this reaction?
Yes, and we really must layer a cross-cultural dimension onto this, particularly for enterprise software companies. How that underlying pressure manifests varies wildly by geography.
For sure. A Western client, say in New York or London, might be incredibly direct.
Right, it feels aggressive, but it's actually a sign they want to salvage the relationship. But if you're dealing with a Japanese enterprise client, the mechanism is completely different.
Because direct confrontation causes a loss of face, right?
Exactly. So they escalate implicitly. They might dramatically slow down approval cycles, suddenly require 3 extra managers on a routine sync call, or just become highly formal in emails. If you miss those subtle cues, by the time you realize they are unhappy, they've already signed with a competitor.
Wow. But diagnosing the psychology of a complaint doesn't mean much if you botch the actual communication when the crisis hits. How does a minor technical glitch transform into a full-blown reputational nightmare?
Through what we call the escalation ladder. And in IT, it's rarely a clean process. It starts as a low-priority help desk ticket, but if it languishes there, the client bypasses the portal and emails your account manager.
And if the account manager gives a vague answer, the client's operations director emails your CTO.
Yes. Suddenly, contradictory information is flowing everywhere, and a narrative solidifies that your entire company is incompetent.
And once it spills out onto external sites like LinkedIn, it's no longer just a support ticket, it's a reputational crisis.
Which is exactly why speed is the ultimate currency. One playbook was emphatic about this. Responding to a Tuesday complaint on Friday is quite simply too late.
Way too late.
If a critical complaint comes in at 3:00 p.m., getting back to them within the hour, even just to say, we see this and we are investigating, is vital. And crucially, you have to pick up the phone.
I cannot emphasize that enough. Treating people like human beings over a voice call resolves complex issues so much faster than robotic emails. But even on a live call, there are massive language landmines we have to navigate.
Oh, absolutely. Language is the exact mechanism where a situation is either diffused or detonated. Let's look at the classic corporate phrase, as per my previous email.
Oh, the ultimate passive-aggressive landmine. The subtext there is basically, you didn't read what I sent, you are incompetent, and this is your fault.
Even if it's factually true, it creates an adversarial dynamic instantly. Another major landmine is the passive voice, non-apology. Mistakes were made.
Right. Who made them?
The server, the wind.
Exactly. It removes all human accountability. Instead, use phrases like, this is on us, or I completely understand how this disrupted your deployment today.
Okay, I have a question about this. Is it possible to over-apologize? Because I've heard calls where teams just say, I'm sorry on repeat, and it actually seems to make the client angrier. Yes, it is highly detrimental to over-apologize, especially if you use the absolute worst phrase in customer service, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Because that shifts the blame to the client's perception.
So exactly. It implies your performance was fine, but their feelings are just wrong. A true apology is action-oriented. You acknowledge the issue, clarify the timeline of what went wrong, propose a concrete technical solution, and agree on next steps.
Okay, so diffusing the immediate anger is crucial emotional triage. But it's fundamentally reactive. How do we stop the factory from making more bombs? We need to shift to long-term systemic prevention.
And that requires distinguishing between a symptom and a root cause. If an application takes 3 minutes to load, that's just a symptom.
Right, throwing more RAM at the server is just a Band-Aid.
Precisely. The root cause might be horribly inefficient database queries. If you only treat the symptom, the exact same problem will resurface next month.
Let's ground this with a specific case study from our sources. Case study 1, the outage. A mid-sized financial firm relying on a SaaS platform experiences a massive 5-hour downtime during peak business hours.
A literal nightmare scenario. Millions of dollars on the line.
But the IT team's response was brilliant. They took full public ownership within 30 minutes. They provided hourly updates directly to stakeholders, even when the update was just, we're still investigating.
And after restoration, they didn't just quietly close the Jira ticket. They delivered a highly detailed root cause analysis explaining the architectural changes they were making.
And the result? That furious client actually renewed their contract for 3 years. Because, as the case study says, surprises are for birthdays, not project updates.
That proactive transparency builds profound trust. But let's look at another systemic failure. Case study 2, the 6-month churn. A software company was hemorrhaging clients at the 6-month mark.
The exit interviews were a mess of random complaints, confusing docs, slow support. But the data analysts found one singular root cause.
The onboarding process.
Yes. It was entirely checkbox driven. The implementation team just made sure the APIs were connected. Check, check, check.
But they never verified if the client was successfully pulling their daily reports. The technical implementation worked, but the business implementation failed. By month 6, they were fundamentally disillusioned.
But by overhauling onboarding to focus on business outcomes, that churn rate plummeted, which brings up the healthy complaint profile.
Yes, treating your complaint log exactly like a product backlog.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be afraid of new complaints as you grow. If you launch a new module and get novel complaints, that's innovation.
It's the cost of doing business.
Exactly. But you should never, ever tolerate the exact same complaints occurring repeatedly. If you get dozens of tickets about a confusing login screen every week, you don't have a support problem. You have a product design problem.
So as we synthesize all of this, the core takeaway for you as a listener is this: handling complaints is not an interruption to your real work. It is the real work.
It absolutely is.
Every valid complaint is a client investing their energy to reveal your blind spots. It's an opportunity to build trust that flawless code alone just cannot provide.
It is the crucible where true partnerships are forged. And, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. If you're looking at your dashboards this week and realize your team hasn't received a single client complaint in months, do not celebrate just yet.
No, that should honestly terrify you.
It really should. You need to ask yourself a very difficult, honest question. Is your product genuinely flawless? Or have you simply created a culture of silence where your clients feel it's no longer worth their time to tell you that you're failing?
That is the ultimate danger. So your homework this week, what is one friction point you can introduce or one question you can ask to make it easier for your clients to complain to you today before they silently leave you tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care, and we'll see you next time.